Hello YouTube, how are you all doing today? Welcome back to my channel. If you've been here before, welcome. If you have never been here before, and thank you for watching. Today I am doing my January wrap-up. I know it's really late, but I am not used to doing wrap-ups because lately I haven't been reading enough books, I feel, to do that, and I haven't really had very big lists. And that's for a lot of reasons. I've been really busy and I've been doing a lot of things, so sometimes my reading slows down a lot and I don't really have anything to say. But this month, or this past month, was actually a really good month for me. So I'm going to start with the two books that I actually read right after New Year's, and that is King of Flesh and Bone by Zander, and it's the first in the Pale Court series. This was a dark fantasy, and it's something if you are a squeamish person, if you don't like blood, guts, gore, rot, bones, all of that, this is not for you because it's very graphic and very interesting and very well written. I actually enjoyed the concept of this story. So this book showed up on my recommended on my Kindle for a long time, and I don't know why I was avoiding it. I guess I don't like to be told what to do. So, but eventually I was kind of in a reading slump, and so I picked it up and I found it actually on one of the audio book websites that I use, which is Scribd. Or actually it's not Scribd anymore. I think it's Everend. They just recently changed it. It showed up in my recommended on Everend, and I decided if it's an audiobook, then I don't really have to put that much effort into reading it because I can just pop it into my ears and go about working out or working or doing whatever I'm doing. So I listened to the audiobook for this. And basically it is set in a world where you have the king of flesh and bone. And he is quite literally the king of flesh and bone. He controls flesh and bone, and I mean controls it as in he can reshape it. He can control what it does. He can create things out of it. His entire kingdom is made of flesh and bone. So because he is a god, and because people misunderstand him, some people don't like him, he went through a trauma where he was captured by mortals and they tortured him continuously for a very long time. And because he is a god and he can regenerate and he doesn't die, he endured a lot of torture, and I mean severing of limbs, burning, skinning, all the things that you might think could happen to somebody happened to him, and he didn't die from it, but it doesn't mean that he doesn't feel it. So basically, he was put through this by people, and he took rot away from, or death sort of in a way, away from mortals. And what that means is that when people die, they don't actually rot. They can't technically be put to rest. So we have this girl who, through a series of unfortunate events, ends up in his kingdom. And he decides he's going to keep her as a slave, basically. And his kingdom, like I said, is just made of bone and flesh, and he's got walking corpses all over the place. It actually sounds really disgusting. And I liked it. I thought it was really interesting. But anyways, he enslaves her. He forces her to basically perform for him in all kinds of ways, including sexual. And it turns into an enemies to lovers, technically. It is a lust to love. He got a very morally gray, possibly morally black hero, and it is their story. And then it does end on a major cliffhanger, which made me have to read book 2. I am not going to go into the reasons I didn't really like book 2, but it wasn't as good as the first one. So, I mean, you'll have to read it and figure it out for yourself. It is dark fantasy, like I said, it is very gross. And there are a lot of things done. It's dark fantasy and it is dark romance. There are a lot of things that this King of Flesh and Bone does that are not good. So keep that in mind if you go into these books. The next book that I read was Hold by Clair Kent, and this is another book that has been recommended by other booktube channels. It has been recommended on my Kindle. This book it's a pretty short read, which I can really get into sometimes, because if I'm reading something very long, I start to get a little bit impatient, and so I just want to start and finish a book maybe in 1 or 2 days sometimes and just feel accomplished. So this book is a science fiction romance, and there are no aliens, which I don't read a lot of those. A lot of science fiction romances I read are has something to do with aliens, so I was actually very excited about this. It is about a woman who she's some sort of I want to say archaeologist or something, and she ends up digging or researching in the wrong place, and it is on some land that she was not supposed to be on. She gets arrested and she gets thrown into this prison that is held underwater on this planet where the water is actually toxic to people. So even if you escape to this prison, it's not like you could get to the surface. You are surrounded by this water that will kill you. And she, for this seemingly minor crime, she is thrown into prison for the rest of her life. And it's a very brutal prison. And she has no idea how to navigate that sort of environment. She's not a criminal. She has no idea what to do. She doesn't really have survival skills in that sense. But one of the guards decides to take pity on her, in a sense. And he tells her, as he's giving her a tour of the prison and showing her around in this like armored truck, because these criminals that she is being put with are very, very dangerous people. So she's been being given a tour of this prison. And this guard tells her the way you're going to survive is you're going to find the strongest, biggest man in this place, and you're going to trade your body, your anything he wants. You're going to give yourself to him in exchange for protection, basically. And so she eyeballs the scruffiest, biggest, most dangerous looking guy in the prison, and she decides to give herself to him, to offer herself to him. And it ends up being exactly what you might think. She ends up, it is forced proximity because she ends up sharing his cell, and it's a lust to love, obviously. She is more or less forced to give herself over to this guy, and then the relationship starts to build throughout the book, as you might expect. And I really, really enjoyed it. Aside from being obviously sexy, their connection was actually really, really sweet. And once you start to get to know the characters and the situations and all of that, I thoroughly enjoyed the pacing and everything about this book. So for what it was, I would probably rate it 5 stars. It was well written and exciting, and I think I read it in about a day. So that's always a good sign. The next one that I read was Willing Prey, and I have no idea how I found this book. It was not recommended. It didn't show up in any list. I think I want to say that I just typed in romance with chase scenes in it, and it somehow showed up. So it came up. It was like the first one on the list that I saw, and I was like, what the hell? So I checked it out, and it is a shorter book. And again, I was super excited about that because I just finished it in a day or a night, can't remember anything. But one of the things I was really excited about is that our heroine was big. And I mean, like, she was tall and she was physically fit. And I really enjoyed that aspect of it because being a tall fitness enthusiast myself, you never really get that sort of representation. And not that I'm complaining, I enjoy like all types of characters in books, but a lot of females in romance books are petite and feminine and adorable. And even if they're feisty and can take care of themselves, they're still kind of like on the smaller feminine side. This woman was not that. I think she was like 5'11", 6 foot even, and she was sturdy. And it's weird for me to say that was like, a plus side to a book, but I actually really enjoyed that. Anyways, this book it starts out where she is obviously divorced and in need of money because she really didn't get anything out of this divorce. And she is divorced because she found out her husband was sleeping with one of his coworkers. And I think it's her husband's boss that ends up being the one that offers her a contract for $20,000. If she signs this contract, she has to live with him for a month. She receives like this watch, and on the watch, like, it will give her a little message And in that message, it'll say how much time she has to run, basically. So our man, our big burly man, has a fetish, and his fetish is chasing somebody through the woods, catching them, and doing the dirty. And it's very, primal. There's a lot of power play, and the reason he offers this to her is because he sees her at some sort of work function while she is still married to her former husband, and he kind of falls head over heels for her, and he kind of overhears her husband talking about, because in his drunken stupor, he's had one too many drinks at this function, and he kind of overhears him talking about the fact that they do this thing where he will chase her through the woods, and then they will bang. And this boss of hers decides he really likes that. So knowing that she needs the money, he offers this contract to her, and she ends up signing it. And a lot of his fetish also comes from not wanting the woman to submit. And I thought that was also really hot, because he really wants her to try, basically, to get away. And this is also a fetish of hers, so she really enjoys being chased. So anyways, it continues like that throughout this month, where he will give her a message and she will run into the woods. She'll bring a backpack full of water, protein bars, whatever, and these chases will be different each time. Sometimes he catches her right away, and sometimes he doesn't. She takes different routes. She makes it all exciting for him. And you can kind of guess where this relationship might be headed, And what I really enjoyed was that their dynamic changes in the end. It's not always him being the one in power. They actually, like, something clicks at some point where they start to trust each other on a different level. There are some really, really sweet things about it. There is an exchange of power here and there, and I just enjoyed it. It was fun. The next one I read is Whispers of the Deep, which is number 1 in Deep Waters by Emma Hamm. This is a monster romance. I am very picky about my monster romance. The reason for that being is that sometimes, and you can read whatever you want. I am not judging anybody who reads monster romance. I know there are a lot of people that love monster romance, and I completely understand that, because there are some monster romance books that I've absolutely loved. This is a futuristic, it's a science fiction. Humans are forced to now live under the ocean because the surface is too dangerous. And I'm assuming, something about natural disasters, there are tidal waves, there are storms, it's basically unlivable for people. So they have built these giant cities underwater that they now reside in. But you have these, I think they call them the Undine. That's what the humans call them, but that's not what the sea people call themselves. The people, I'm pretty sure the sea people call themselves people of water or something like really simple like that. But anyways, humans call them the Undine, and they are basically at war because humans came in building cities in their beautiful ocean and ruining things as humans do. And the Undine really don't like that, so they are constantly trying to sabotage these cities. Now we have this woman who is an engineer, but she basically puts her skills to use being a welder in this city, but she's very, very, very smart. And through a series of events where the Undine attack their city, she ends up meeting one of these mermen, and they have an interaction. They don't like each other. They have an interaction though, and then this merman, when he escapes, tells his people, and he's given an assignment to go and get to know this woman and somehow learn more about her people so that they can attack again more effectively. So his job is basically to get information. He does that by kidnapping her and just, it's a little bit weird. So she has to leave the city in like this suit where she can breathe underwater. It's like some sort of high-tech scuba diving suit. She leaves the city on an assignment to go and fix portions of their domes that were ruined when the Undine attacked. While she's out doing her thing, he comes up and he kidnaps her, and he puts her in these like little underwater caves. I'm going to assume these caves had these like giant air bubbles in them because they're obviously very, very deep under the ocean, but she can obviously breathe. So it's one of those, she can live in these caves. She obviously can't leave the caves because she has no idea where she is. The water that deep into the ocean is super, super cold. So she is held captive while he reluctantly tries to learn things about her and her people. So there's a language barrier, as you might imagine, that they do end up breaking slowly throughout the book. And they start learning about each other and they start, you know, getting attached. She needs him for survival. He starts to understand her and starts to like her. And it's a slow burn. So the heat doesn't start till very much later in the book, which was fine because I enjoyed the way their relationship progressed. He is very, very not human. Obviously, he is a merman, but everything about him is inhuman, and he's got gills everywhere. He doesn't look human at all. I think the most human thing about him is that he has hair. I enjoyed the story. I enjoyed the world. I enjoyed how in depth the author went with how the Undine look and how they function. I think one of the things that he points out, I forgot his name, but he points it out at some point that she is very small. This woman that he's kidnapped is very small and petite and weak. And that is because the females of his species are actually larger than the males, and their mating ritual is very violent. So you can imagine how that would go when he decides he's starting to have, you know, when he admits that she gets him all hot and bothered. You can imagine the reservations he has about, you know, mating. But anyways, the dynamic is really cute. Again, slow burn. I liked the world. I thought it was really interesting. There is a book too, either out or coming out, that I will be reading because it is about a character that I want to read about that is introduced in the first book. So again, monster romance. If you like that, if that is your thing, then I think you would probably really, really love this book. The next one I read is Alaska Wild by Helena Newbury. And this book is, again, it's another book that came up when I was looking for survival romance. And this is probably the most typical survival situation that you could ever find. It is about an FBI agent who goes to Alaska and she hitches a ride on an airplane that is transporting she's on assignment. And I can't remember exactly what that assignment is, but she needs to be somewhere to find somebody. She hitches a ride on this airplane that is transporting a criminal. His name is Boone. I remember that because I just looked up this book to write this list before I made this video. His name is Boone, and he is a criminal, like a war criminal, basically. And he's on this airplane along with another criminal, and they are being transported. During this transportation, I mean, obviously she sees Boone and she thinks he's super hot. He's like this mountain man, you know, like very rugged. But obviously she's an FBI agent. She should not be looking at criminals like that, obviously. But this is a romance book, so things happen. So she's on this airplane and she starts to figure out certain things. She starts to see certain things. She wasn't even supposed to be on this plane, by the way. She just really needed to get where she was going, and this is Alaska. There's not exactly like, you know, taxis that you can take to go across the state. So she wasn't even supposed to be there, and she kind of sabotages some of the plans of some of the people on this airplane. See, one of these criminals has paid off some of the people who are transporting him, and their plan is to escape this airplane by bringing the airplane down and then parachuting to the ground and pretending that they died in the plane crash. But the collateral damage would be her and this other prisoner and the pilot. So she figures out that this is something that's going to happen and she tries to stop it. Everything goes to hell, and she ends up on this crashed airplane with Boone, this war criminal. They end up being the two only survivors on this crashed airplane, and they have to help each other survive. Lucky for our FBI agent, Boone has been on the run for quite some time before he was caught, and he lives in Alaska and he knows the wilderness very, very well. And one of his tactics, or one of his strategies for hiding out from the authorities, was living out in the middle of Alaska, in the middle of nowhere. So he knows exactly how to navigate this terrain, but ends up having to take care of her because she does not know how to navigate the terrain. So they are basically, you know, surviving with each other and being attracted to each other while they're surviving with each other. And these criminals who escaped the airplane end up finding out that they are alive, and if they are alive, then they are witnesses. And so along with surviving in the wilderness of Alaska, they are also running from these criminals that are trying to eliminate witnesses to their escape. Anyways, it's very straightforward. I mean, it was fun. I enjoyed it. It was cute. It reminds me a lot of what is that movie? 6 Days and 7 Nights with Harrison Ford. That might not be what it's called, but and Hesh and Harrison Ford, where they get like in a plane crash or something on an island, and they don't like each other, but like they have to survive together. Okay, honestly, it really doesn't remind me. I don't know why it reminded me of that, because it's completely different, because one's Alaska and one's a tropical island, and one they hate each other and one they're instantly attracted to each other, but that's what it made me think of. Anyways, the next one that I read, and all of you are going to shake your heads at me, I just know it, because this is something I feel like everybody thinks that all booktubers have read or must read, and I am the rare person, where the rare romance reader that has not read these books. I know a lot about them, a lot about them, and but I've never actually read them. And that is A Court of Thorns and Roses. I finally read that book. I started it in December actually, and I finished it a couple days ago. So I'm just putting it on my January wrap up, because the majority of the reading that I did of that book was in January. But anyways, I know everything. I know the twists and turns. I know you know, the romances, the relationships. I know vaguely what the characters are, but I am reading it in depth at this point for various reasons. One, because I just feel like I should be down with the times. And I'm not somebody that likes, I kind of avoid a lot of mainstream things, not because I don't want to be part of the like popular crowd. It's more that I get overwhelmed knowing that there's so much content out that I have to catch up on, because these books are hefty and I'm very behind on them. But I have chosen to go down this path. I don't think I need to tell you guys what A Court of Thorns and Roses is about. Everybody knows, I feel like, at this point, at least a little bit about it. It's like trying to tell people what Harry Potter is about. But, I mean, like, even if you haven't read those books, you know what Harry Potter is. A Court of Thorns and Roses, for the sake of, talking about books I've read on this channel, A Court of Thorns and Roses is a fantasy romance, and there is some sort of a divide between fae and humans. And this woman, who is kind of the provider for her family, she ends up going on a hunting trip and killing the wrong thing, aka a fae. Because she does that, this fae man, it's kind of Beauty and the Beast-ish. I don't know if, I'm pretty sure the author kind of meant for it to be that way, but he comes and he's like, you killed one of my fae people. And in exchange for basically letting her family off the hook, she is forced to go with him to his fae kingdom and live in his house, kind of like Beauty and the Beast. And he and everybody in this place has to wear a mask, and there is a reason behind that. There's some sort of a curse. And eventually, being his captive, she starts to learn a lot about his world. They start to enjoy each other's company. And in the end of the book, or throughout the book, she ends up figuring out a way to break this curse that this whole place is under. That is such a dumbed down, super, super vague explanation of this book. Like I said, it's huge and the world is vast. But again, it's so easy to find information about these books, so I feel like I don't have to go super, super into it. Moving on. And the last book that I read in January, I actually got an advanced reader's copy of this, and I was super excited. And that is Man of No House, which is number 2 in the Draconic Chronicles by Mona Storm. I'm getting tongue-tied because this is a much longer video than I had intended it to be. My mind works much faster than my mouth, so I tend to speak really fast if I don't like pull the reins back. Anyways, I read the first book in this series, which is A Song of Smoke. I don't usually buy hard copies of books because I don't have the space where I currently live. I'm renting a room from a friend, so a lot of our stuff is in storage, and I just don't want to add to the clutter. And I have dreams of having my own place and being able to fill a huge room full of books, and until then I don't want to buy books and put them in boxes, and it would make me sad. But I did buy this book because, first of all, I wanted to support the author, and second, I just really, really liked it. So if you didn't read the first book, it is a world full of dragon shifters and magic, and there's a very detailed political system in these books that I really, really enjoyed. The second book, in my opinion, doesn't have to be read with the first book. They can be read alone, but I obviously will recommend the first book always before you read the second book, because it is about different characters. So the second book is about can't remember names because I never remember. Mira. Might be Mira. Mira and Tristan. Anyways, so Mira is a healer. She's very young to have the position that she has. She has her own apothecary and all this other things. She went through some sort of a ceremony where this spirit of a snake chose her. It was like this big thing. And so she is a healer. And because of events in the first book that the author does actually explain a lot in the second book, which is why I think you can read them separately. But because of events in the first book, there is some sort of a plague/curse sort of thing going on. And without going like too deeply into the actual story, because I think you should just read it, the love portion and the romance portion comes from one of the dragons that lives in this place. It's called Mesa. It is this big like mountain city. It's inside a mountain. She is an orphan and she has no idea who her parents are. So and this other guy that she ends up falling in love with, who actually ends up falling like head over heels for her the moment he sees her, but doesn't want to be with her because he's got this whole complex in his head. They kind of get wrapped up in this situation where they're all trying to manage/break this curse. Both of them are orphaned and have abandonment issues, and they kind of come together in that. They kind of bond over that fact. And this is a slow burn. They instantly kind of like each other, but there's a huge focus on the story before their romance. It deals a lot with gods and things that were kind of mentioned in the first book but not really expanded on until this book. And there's a lot of trials, a lot of spiritual moments, and you know, a lot of like self-discovery. And then there's the romance that kind of happens while these two are going on their own journeys. And I actually really enjoyed that because I don't know, I feel like a lot of times in romance, they get together so quickly that they don't develop on their own. And it was kind of the opposite in this book, where they kind of developed on their own. And then while they were doing that, kind of found each other in the mix sort of thing. So again, slow burn, heavy plot and world building and magic. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. If you've heard me rant or if you've heard me talk about the first book, then you know that I just really enjoy this author and I think she's very underrated, and I think you should all pick it up because if I am not mistaken, they are on Kindle Unlimited right now, which is, you know, you never know when an author's going to take their books off of Kindle Unlimited and then you won't be able to read it for free. Those are all the books that I read in January. So many more than I thought I would be able to read, and I am off to a really good start for February, so I might actually do a February wrap-up. The news that I said that I had in my last video has a lot to do with why I am reading A Court of Thorns and Roses. And that news is that this October there is an event happening here in Arizona called A Night Under the Mountain, and it is themed around A Court of Thorns and Roses. And I'm going to be able to play one of the characters from the books, which is the Suriel. Super excited about that. I already have all the supplies for my makeup and everything that I want to do, and I am currently making the costume for that. The last event put on by Fantastique Collection, which is the organizers, was really fun, and that was the New Year's Fae Ball that I had vlogged about like a couple months ago. And I'm just really excited to do one with more of a creepy theme. Probably be recording a lot of my creation of that costume and of that character as well. And yeah, so I will be reading the next book in The Court of Thorns and Roses for that reason, and I'm gonna get my ass caught up. But anyways, that is all the news I have for you. Those are all the books I read in January. Thank you so much everybody for being here. Thank you for watching. If you have gotten to the end of this long video, thank you, I appreciate it. Leave a like, leave a comment if you've read any of these books or if you have suggestions. I'm always open to hear what you guys have to say. And subscribe if you're not subscribed already. I'm really trying to get to 600 subscribers. And until next time, I will see you all later. Bye!